Hello and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live, wherever you're joining from, whether you're joining from North America, across Europe, or somewhere else in the world. I'm really pleased that you've decided to join us today. And whether you're watching on LinkedIn with LinkedIn Live, or whether you're watching on thinkdigital.travel, or perhaps somewhere else, it's great to have you with us. So for the next 30 to 45 minutes, we are going to deep dive on AI. And you've probably heard a lot of really interesting conversations and perspectives on AI over the last couple of years, and probably looked at a lot of research and insights to try and get a better understanding of how AI is impacting everything from strategy to workflow and productivity, and of course, how that translates through to your consumer actions, especially if you're a DMO. There's a lot to think about. Today, we are going to get really hands-on with AI as I discuss with Janette Roush, who is the VP of Innovation at Brand USA. I will be discussing with her exactly how she has been putting AI to the test, as she has definitely made it her mission to become the industry's sandbox for AI tools and see just what they're capable of, or perhaps what they're not capable of. I'm Nick Hall, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Digital Tourism Think Tank. And if you have any questions or comments on anything we discussed today, drop it in the chat or drop it on the discussion thread, and we'll be sure to get back to you and try to address the questions that you have. But for now, let's introduce Janette. Janette, great to have you with us. And well, what an honor that you've managed to make time in your busy AI schedule to be part of today's live stream. Maybe to kick things off, before we just jump into AI and really unpackage it, just give us a sense of kind of what it means to be Brand USA's, I think, the first VP of Innovation, and kind of what you've tasked yourself with in this role. As what I can definitely say, you've definitely made your mark as an industry thought leader. But what does it mean to you to have this role?
Yes, so I'm the SVP of Innovation and the Chief AI Officer. And I'm, to my knowledge, the first and I think still the only Chief AI Officer for a destination marketing organization anywhere, right? And I take that in order to kind of make it more bite-sized. I look at the job as taking kind of three tranches of work. So the first one is internal, and how are we at Brand USA using AI to make our jobs more affordable, to do things and more efficient, to make it more fun to do the work that we're doing, to enjoy what we're doing, and then the second tranche is to take everything that we're learning internally and extending that out into the U.S. tourism industry. So making sure that destinations and tourism businesses understand the opportunity that's afforded to us by AI. And then the third tranche of work is how can AI help to make the United States more discoverable and more bookable as a destination for both our B2B partners as well as for consumers.
Amazing. So that's a really strong mission, I think, that you've got there, because you kind of touch on all the key pillars. And I think for many of us, we'll have seen how some of those AI innovations have already made their way through to that consumer-facing work that you just mentioned there. Well, where should we get started with AI? I guess what would be really interesting to know is, as we get started, how do you feel about AI today? You've been on this journey. You've put AI to the test in every way possible. Perhaps we can say the halo effect of AI is starting to wear off, and we're starting to think about it more seriously, more strategically. But what has that journey been like for you in terms of really kind of hacking out what AI's potential looks like?
So I think it's in some cases becoming less about the AI itself. In terms of using it for travel planning, there's still a lot of opportunity for hallucinations to happen, right? If you're just inside your personal Chat GPT or Claude or Gemini account, it's not always going to be the most reliable place today without leaving to go onto the internet to do travel planning or to do travel booking. But where there are tons of opportunities is using AI to help kind of extend the work that we're doing and learn how to do things in new ways. So if you look at vibe coding, which is just using AI to help code for you, I think for destinations particularly, there is a lot of opportunity to create single use apps, single use websites that help to solve a problem for us that perhaps would not have been worth the development costs to do that in the past. The website or the app itself doesn't need to use or involve AI in any way. So it's just the fact that AI can help to create these things more quickly. So if, as an imaginary example, back in 2011, 2012, whatever year Hurricane Sandy happened in New York City, uh, the servers for New York City tourism, I wasn't at the company at the time, but those servers were located in lower Manhattan and they were flooded. And so everybody at the company is then on deck trying to help hoteliers move guests from hotels that needed to close down because of the floods to hotels where there were rooms. And there was no email because those servers were flooded. So people were on their cell phones trying to locate who has phone numbers for general managers. In a post AI world, we could use AI to very quickly spin up an app or a website that could help then connect hotels that have guests that need to move to the hotels where there is availability. And the app itself doesn't need to be AI. It's AI that helps make code writing and website development accessible to anybody who has the curiosity to learn how to do it. So like that is where a lot of my interest in AI is right now.
That's a really great example, I think, of a use case that already kind of takes us beyond the typical kind of day-to-day use that most of us are familiar with when it comes to using one of the LLMs. And I think a really great example there of how AI can quickly help us to create a landing page, maybe even a small microsite to address a particular problem at a particular moment in time, where previously we're either restricted to the horrible legacy tech, which holds us back most of the time, or we're dependent on agencies who will charge us a lot for that solution. So, and perhaps
Hmm.
exploit a very bad situation. So I think that's such an amazing example. What would be your tool of preference if you had to do that today?
Claude Code is what I would
Oh, yeah.
use right this
Yeah.
minute for that.
Isn't
I've been
Claude
using
amazing?
Claude. Amazing.
I feel like we shouldn't really discuss this because I still feel like it's a bit of a secret, right? But but I mean, before we get into back to some of the more strategic stuff, if you were to kind of put all the LLMs, or at least the top three, in order, what would it be for you?
Oh, it's different purposes for everything. So for ideation and writing, I really like Claude the most right now, as well as for anything technical, anything that requires coding. Chat GPT, very general use for me. I also have many of the connectors enabled. So if I want to access, like, all of our file storage is in Box. And I have the Box connector turned on for ChatGPT. So it makes it much more powerful for getting work done. And now they're extending projects so that you can share projects within a team. I'm finding that very useful. Uh, and then for images, the new Nano Banana image generator inside of Gemini is incredible. It's very fast. So even if you don't love the first image that comes back, it's easy enough to spin up, alternatives until you get what you need. And it's only going to take 15 seconds or so per image. That has been a huge help when putting together presentations for me.
Yeah, we were just talking about that in the backstage, and indeed, it is incredible and really accurate in depicting what you would like it to depict, which probably wasn't the case with Sora. I think it's really exciting because you and I have probably spent most of our time using these as kind of front-end interfaces in the same way that almost everybody does. But they also give us a bit of a glimpse into the back-end capabilities. If you're coding or building a site, the ability to integrate Nano Banana into that campaign platform. Maybe you create something really funky where users can then develop their own images off the back of that. I
Mm.
mean, I'm not going to develop a strategy just now, probably turn to Claude for that. But I think it's really interesting when you start to understand what they're capable of. you also start to see what you could do if you actually
Hmm.
invested in more infrastructure and integrating that. So it kind of seems to have that dual benefit of being both educational for us when we use it. We really start to see what's possible, as well as transformative, but also pointing us to different kind of strategic opportunities, which maybe go beyond our day-to-day technical abilities. One of your kind of objectives is to make Brand USA an AI-driven or AI-first organization. So I think what I've seen from working with destinations and running impact days is that we often go in with, if I'm to be honest, an element of fear, because we think, "Wow, everybody's using AI every day. So what if we can't show them anything new? Like, what if we can't kind of, what if they just say, well, yeah, I'm already doing that. Yeah, I know that. And actually, every time we go in with this fear, we walk out saying, I cannot believe they were just using ChatGPT, or they were just asking it to improve their emails, or whatever basic things most people do. So I'd say that's definitely been the enlightening part of doing this from my part. But obviously, you're really embedded within your own organization. So maybe you have more time and space to push people. But yeah, what does that, what does that look like within Brand USA? I guess there's different levels and different levels of openness, but it seems like everybody's pretty much embracing it.
Yeah, no, the response has been fantastic internally. Everybody's really excited about the opportunities. But just like any organization, it is easy to default to thinking of AI as either fancy Google or email rewriting machine. And I will say, back in April, I went with our head of HR to a HR and AI conference in San Francisco, and we were like, and I was so excited to find out, okay, great. What are actual HR people using AI to do? And there must be things that we aren't thinking of. And the entire conference was about, oh, AI is important and HR should lead the AI revolution in their organizations, which I'm on board with, but I wasn't learning anything. So on the second day, I finally raised my hand during one of the sessions. I'm like, this is great. What are you using AI to do? And the response from the panel was, "Oh, well, AI is really good at helping with job descriptions." Like, okay, like I knew that. Like, and it just
Yeah.
it just gave me permission to say, and maybe you've had this experience too. Like, there is no magic secret thing to do. It's just let's sit down as teams and look at what are the repetitive workflows that this could help with. What are the ways to, and this is what I'm focusing on in my, as get ready to start my second year in this role. Year one was very much about individual enablement, making tools available to the team. And that doesn't have to be fancy. That doesn't have to be, oh, make $1 million investment in infrastructure. For us, it looks like making paid team accounts for both Claude and ChatGPT available to the entire staff. And we do two different models because sometimes one is just better than the other. I think it shows that AI is not a monolith, that these models are trained differently and they are fine tuned differently. They were trained on different corpuses of text. And sometimes, like, and they also, when it's back to school time, Chat GPT doesn't work as well as it did a month earlier because the servers are being overloaded with requests. So, and that makes it behave differently over time. So, having access to two different models helps to show people that AI, it's not just try something one time. And then if it doesn't work, oh, well, I guess AI isn't good for this.
Yeah.
So, right?
Yeah,
We,
exactly. I mean, I'd love to turn to kind of that. I mean, we mentioned at the start the trip planning side, and I think we'll come back to that in maybe the second half of the conversation because I'd love to kind of see how all of this familiarity looks like for consumers, and kind of what your thoughts are on that. But talking about those differences with AI, I think it's really interesting. We often, when I have a tricky document to work on, I will often run it by three different tools, so Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude. Or work with maybe ChatGPT because you never seem to run out of characters, which you do on on Claude.
Right. Hmm.
But then move it over to Claude to then improve it and to add something either more academic, more strategic, just more comprehensive in terms of linguistically. So I think it's really interesting how those of us who get it, we're switching daily, constantly between different tools. And something like deep research, I mean, what are your thoughts on deep research? Because I remember you posted probably about 6 months ago when it was new. Wow, this is incredible. This is like a PhD. I'm wondering if kind of now the dust has settled, if you still have the same level of satisfaction with deep research results.
I do actually. I find it to be one of the very most useful aspects of working with any of these tools because now they all have this deep research capability. And so to have a question and want that question to be answered in some factual way and to have a McKinsey style report that accompanies the research, I that's been helpful for me as I'm preparing a keynote that I'm going to deliver at a MACON, the Marketing AI Institute conference, in a couple of weeks. And the speech is going to be on the role of wonder in AI adoption at organizations. And I wanted to go into that speech with like actual research on how does wonder and awe play into our understanding of like opening up our brains to learn new things. And so it's able to then go spend an hour searching different websites to understand what role might wonder and awe play in the learning process. I get this great report back and I get all the links so I can click through and read the studies and make sure they actually reflect what the report says that they reflect. Back when deep
Yeah.
research was first released, it happened to be an HQ week, so everybody was together in the Brand USA offices, and I had a meeting with our communications team. I was like, I want to show everybody this. This is so cool. And they're like, oh, do you think you could run a deep research report on UK media? And over the last 12 months, how has their travel reporting changed? And which stations and which publications and which newspapers still have dedicated, travel and tourism desks? And how has the reporting changed over the last 12 months? And the report that came back, everybody was like, that is so great. Can we do it now for Singapore? Can we do it for Australia? And so like
Yeah.
I know that team is in the deep research functionality all the time.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm glad to hear that because I think I've maybe got mixed feelings about it, but the but I do find when you're really specific in asking or defining the sort of sources, or even being really precise with the
Mm,
sources that it should look at, the results completely change. So, for example, asking it to look only at officially, documents that are published by official bodies and organizations or government organizations, that really changes what you're going to get. And what I also do is run it between, I'll run 3 deep researches and then I'll copy and paste the whole lot into one big thing, and then I'll stick it all into Claude and ask for it to like consider everything. So I think it's definitely about being resourceful with how you use these tools. Um, Turning to kind of image and video and the more creative side, um, where would you say you've had successes there, and where have you had mega fails? I'm going to tell you about a mega fail that I had very recently, but I'd love to know your kind of perspective on which tools have really surprised you or stood out that maybe even are quite niche or people haven't heard of, and how do you see yourself using those? Obviously you're doing a lot of presentations, so I do a lot of keynotes myself, and one of the toughest things is nobody ever appreciates how much time goes in, well, sometimes they do, into making it really slick and amazing. But you can spend days just tweaking the gradient or something stupid like this. So I'm looking for tools that will do this. So far, I've not had any real success, but there's a lot out there. So what's your experience of the creative side of things been?
So back in January, I had the same experience you're talking about, where I said it is time for my presentations to look like they are generated by somebody who works with artificial intelligence. And so
Yes.
I like, okay, enough of just like the plain old PowerPoint deck. Like, what is the next level of this? So I one way that the way that I actually got into working with artificial intelligence was when generative AI first came out. I said, I'm going to try something new at work using AI every single day, and I'm going to post about it on LinkedIn. And that was January 2023. And at the end of January, I had a good understanding of, okay, this is what it's great at and this is what it's terrible at. So I said, I'm going to make that same challenge to myself. And it was January of this year, but it's going to be with presentation tools. And then it ended up not being that much of a challenge because fairly early in the month, I leaned into using beautiful.ai to build
Uh,
presentations. And it has been awesome.
Okay,
It,
that's
there,
a
yeah.
good tip. Yeah, I mean, I
Hmm.
think one of the challenges is, and I think a lot of people watching will really empathize or feel the frustration of this, is the cost of testing, the cost both in terms of time and the cost
Time.
in terms of in terms of going beyond freemium, because what you often find is you can get a glimpse of a tool, but to really test it to the limits that you need, you're going to have to pay, even just to see if it can really go as far as you want. So recently, the story I was going to share was Gamma, which I'm sure you've tried Gamma. And I weighed it up between Beautiful.ai and Gamma. And I think it's also really interesting because you see a lot of legacy tools which were pre-AI have completely transformed themselves, added AI to the end, and now they're
Mm.
AI. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, exactly. So I
AI.
thought, yeah, so I had a 60-page white paper that I had produced, and I really wanted to see, I'm careful with the words here.
Hmm.
I really wanted to really make sure it was slick on brand. And I worked with Gamma for days. I worked with the free trial. I weighed up with the team. I said, okay, we've got these 10 pages. Can it do the rest? Do we give it our $25? And in the end, the verdict was no way. It is terrible. And in the end, I actually designed it myself, and it took about a day. And I thought, this is crazy. I've spent 2 days messing around with a very amateur-looking AI tool, and in the end, I can do this better myself. And I'm pretty sure there isn't a tool out there that can build such a comprehensive white paper. So I think this maybe it's reassuring for the graphic designers of this world that their jobs have not been replaced just yet. But I think
Yeah,
it also
the
shows
tools are
the
so much
frustration.
more bite-sized than you want them to be,
Exactly.
right? You
Exactly.
can't just throw something in and say, "Great, finish this for me. Make this
Yeah.
a," It's like, no, you still have to go slide by slide and decide what's going to be on the slide if you want to do it well.
Exactly. And have you tried or had a lot of chance to experience tools like Runway and some of the sort of more pro end of the video production where you can do some pretty cool and interesting things on the editing flow? I don't know if you've had a chance to really go into like all of these tools, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are.
Mhm. So I have used Runway and I have used Midjourney. And I will say this is why I tell people that AI rewards people who have subject matter expertise, because
Yeah,
what I do not have when it comes to video editing or photo creation is subject matter expertise at all. This is not my universe. And so anything that I get out of these tools looks pretty amateurish. So that's why I encourage graphic designers, like, play with and explore this stuff, because you are the ones who are going to be able to get the most benefit from it. Tools where I have had a lot of luck would include Descript. Have you used
yeah.
Descript yet?
We use Descript every day. Don't say too much about
Mhm.
Descript. We'll give all of our secrets away. But we do a lot of podcasts, and we have pushed this to the limits. We've also even tested the avatar. That didn't work out so well. But I mean, for the most part, it's pretty amazing. Even things like straightening up the eye line and auto green screening, a video like
Hmm.
this. So yeah, enormous potential, and you can see there where destinations, I think destinations also sometimes suck a little bit at their B2B industry communications. It's like they do an amazing job with the consumer side. They put all their money in, and then it's like for the trade, it's just like, yeah, here's our trade platform, and there's all the information, and everything's in a Google Drive. And I think it's really important to be thought leaders. So tools like Descript really give you what you need to be able to go out there and share that thought leadership and really create packaged content that works, that is social first as well.
I'll give you a tip on the avatars. Make an avatar that isn't a human, because then it's adorable. I made some videos where I created an avatar of myself that looked like I was created out of yarn. And so real Janette avatar, look, it's choppy, it looks fake, it hits that uncanny valley where it's uncomfortable to watch. The yarn version of me delivering the same information, you lean in because it's really cute, and it's, obviously it's not real. Obviously it's
Yeah,
AI. And I
yeah,
think for like a conversation I have a lot is around video generation and what is acceptable for a destination to do.
yeah,
Like, we don't want to trick consumers, right? We don't want to make
exactly.
fake destination images. But there's
Yeah.
all kinds of images that we can do, or avatars we can create that are very obviously fake. And like that, it protects your brand from this idea that you're trying to trick people.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly. And I think this is where a lot of people are weighing up this authenticity question, which is completely correct, I guess. But there are ways to integrate AI even into your consumer facing content if it's really quite playful and fun. And actually, you're shouting out, yeah, we did this
Yeah,
with AI. Isn't this
exactly.
funny, or isn't this engaging? And yeah, I think sometimes people have a tendency to try and sort of hide that, but you've got to go all out. So that's a really great segue to the consumer side of our conversation. I'm going to share some insights which I actually got just this morning. So I'm really yeah, I
Oh,
think they're really interesting. Let me just share my window. So we work with a partner called GSIQ, and they do a lot of global polling on different subject matters that are just really pertinent for consumers. And we've got some really great insights here from them on how AI is being used in travel planning. So I thought, it'd be good to share these, maybe to set some context for the rest of our conversation. What's really interesting is if you see here, the sources of inspiration used by travelers. If you see here the red line, the AI-based travel planning tools and apps, you can see the 26%, the 25 to 34 age group. That's I thought maybe it's going to be 80 to 100%, but this is really going straight into something like ChatGPT and using it as a travel planning tool. And what you can see is it's really quite high up there. It's not yet dominating over, say, travel websites and platforms or friends and family, thank God, although some of us feel like ChatGPT is our friend and our family. But it's very, very close there to the dominance of destination sites. So this raises probably the same sort of questions, that we've been asking about the relevance of our brands online and how we engage and which tools we engage through. And I know that this has been a big topic of conversation for a lot of the destinations that we've engaged with, which is how do we ensure we're more visible and we have more attribution for our visibility in the LLMs like ChatGPT. Also, in terms of markets, perhaps surprisingly, perhaps not, China being far out ahead. We've seen some really interesting examples in our team. Really, I'd say from less of a research perspective and more from a kind of anecdotal perspective, where we just keep meeting young people who have never even imagined looking on a website for information and just go straight to ChatGPT when they're traveling. And just those conversations you have are just eye-opening because you suddenly realize the world has changed so dramatically that ChatGPT is considered the best place to turn to for a plan, for an idea, for a recommendation. And so that is only going to increase. And you can see here the difference in age groups. So the 18 to 44 group, based on leisure travelers in the UK and Germany, 74% of them being AI users. I would still argue that's probably 100%, but it obviously depends how people respond to that. And also looking a little bit about what they're seeking. So looking for trips that reflect their values. It's around half of the AI users looking for that. and also their intention to travel in the next 12 months. So they're clearly a very prime audience as well to focus on. And I think this is something that we all really need to get clued up on, because if they are a valuable audience, if they represent a really prime opportunity, and their behaviors mean that they go first and direct to AI tools for answers, this poses massive questions for us as brands. We recently had on one of our workstream discussions with members, we had Dan Rosenberg in your team
Oh,
talking about America the Beautiful. I think really an eye-opener for anybody who wants to see what deep and complete AI integration looks like. But maybe give us a sense of where you see these big strategic critical questions coming into play at Brand USA. How do we answer that question about attribution and visibility and what we need to do? And that that question that never goes away, which is what is our role still relevant as DMOs? Should we still have websites? These are the questions we've had for the last 10 years. And I think
yes.
AI just brings them all the way back and makes us question everything again.
hmm Well, DMOs sit at this intersection, like very uniquely, the intersection of visitors, locals, businesses that benefit from tourism, and government. So there is no better, organization to encompass the brand of a destination and to start solving these problems. And I think we're not going to solve the problems by having websites that just repeat the same information that is already been commoditized. So if the information you have on your website is just a regurgitation of anything that you can find in the Google point of interest API, then you are not providing unique value. Google is not going to send traffic to your website because addresses and opening hours of businesses in your destination, that's commoditized. That is already in Google's system. They are going to deliver that as part of an AI overview. It exists elsewhere. You are not going to get traffic for having that kind of information on your website. So the next step is thinking about what is the information that's not been commoditized, and that is going to be more stories about our destination and things that are backed up by expert opinions or the point of view of real people. And then I think the step after that is thinking about how do we reach people when they are inside the tools that they're increasingly going to use for travel planning. So how do you reach people inside of ChatGPT and these other tools? And I think the way that is going to happen in the future is through model context protocol. So have you started talking about that yet at the Digital Think Tank?
No, so give us your take on that.
All right. So APIs have historically been the pipes of the internet. That is how bookings happen. That is how we
Yeah.
connect, yeah, to websites in order to understand, okay, great. These are the dates that tickets are available for this attraction. And then here's the pipe where I put in my credit card information and I book that trip. I book that ticket. MCP, Model Context Protocol, is a way to make APIs accessible to a language model. So, APIs traditionally, you need programmers in order to write code that connects endpoints. So, you need a programmer to say, all right, if I connect these two pipes, that's where the credit card information goes. These two pipes, I'm connecting what date the tickets are being booked for. But language models, I don't like to anthropomorphize them, but they're smart, right? They don't need programmers and developers writing code. So MCP is self-describing. It will just tell the language model, this is what I do. This is where the credit card information goes, or this is where the data feed of great content about this destination lives. This is how you can get photos or videos from this website into the language model. And if a change is made to the API or to this back end, an API, it would break. You would have to bring in a developer in order to rewrite the code. But because MCP is self describing, as changes are made, it just says, this is how I work right now. And so it continues to work. And so this is still a new technology. It's an open source protocol that Anthropic, which is the creator of the Claude chatbot, they created this last September. And so I started becoming familiar with it probably in March of this year. And I've had enough conversations about this. I have heard enough people talking about this that I feel pretty confident this is the direction that that industry is moving in. So if you
Yeah,
look
and
at chat, mhm.
yeah, no,
If
I
you
think you really kind of hit the nail on the head. This is about um, getting creating a more, feeding the AI tools with the signals, with the signposting to what we can offer them to enrich the results, rather than just kind of holding our hands up and saying we're at the mercy of however the
right.
hell they find us and whatever they serve up. So it's really about surfacing the right content, the relevant content, and also helping them to add that context and to really narrow down to more accurate, more relevant responses. Do you see destinations being able to really work with these opportunities, or is it going to be something that is actually up to the vendors to really start to adjust how they provide the technology solutions that do that work for us?
So I think it's incumbent upon DMOs to actually start building these MCP servers with our information and our data. And I think if we don't do it, then other organizations, commercial organizations will do it and then charge us for visibility in it.
Yeah.
And so I believe that as nonprofits and as owners of the brands of our destinations, that's where our opportunity sits, is to create this neutral source of information. So if you think about ChatGPT today, it's all text based, right? But it's not going to always be text based. And so in 1 or 5 years, when you are in your account, if you want to start dreaming about a trip, perhaps it will spin up something that looks like what we would call a website today, like some kind of visual interactive interface. But to do that, the visuals need to be fed in from somewhere. I think that is something that destinations can provide. And then the stories behind why would you want to come to this destination? Again, that's something that we can provide that's unique to where we sit in the ecosystem, that's richer than just, oh, here's a business address. Here is the opening
Mm.
hours of that business.
And so this is really kind of pointing towards a very different future in terms of how we research and get inspiration and also move that down the funnel, which I think is really, it's connecting both ends there in a way that just haven't been that smooth before, where we can, create something that's really inspirational and turn that into a plan and adjust and adapt and personalize that plan. And so that's really, really exciting. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk around kind of agentic AI and all the possibilities there. I don't know if you've had a chance to experiment and play in this space. I've seen some actually some really impressive examples just on the phone where just through 1 or 2 prompts, you actually end up manipulating like 7 or 8 different apps on your phone and blocking your calendar, routing to different places. And for me, that really opened up just this awe and amazement of what we can actually be creating as destinations. Because if we're able to not just give people content, not just give them inspiration, but to a certain degree, create a plan for them that ends up in their calendar, that routes them to wherever they need to be going, and that can just take those actions on their behalf. I think that becomes really interesting because one of the things as a traveler, we all have this problem is we get lots of information and we just try to either pin it, save it. Most people just pin it on Google Maps, to be honest. And then we try
That's what
to
I do.
do like 1 or 2 things that we thought were interesting. And, in the world of social, that's even more difficult because we have to kind of save posts and follow people. And then we remembered there was, a top 5 things to do in New York, but we can't find it again. I mean, this is where AI can really help to organize all of that very unstructured and fragmented information that leads up to our decisions and organize it in a way that's really interesting for us. How do you see destinations, in terms of what they could create in the front end? What excites you? What would you love to see in the next maybe 2 years from some of the best destinations, maybe from Brand USA?
I think what you are describing, that's not going to happen on the destination side. I think everything you describe is going to happen on a person's personal AI. It's going to happen
Yeah,
in your phone because that is what is connected to my calendar. That is what understands the context of each trip that I take. And it knows that this is a business trip and I'm going by myself, but this is a holiday and I'm going with my husband and stepkids. So I I think that something agentic where you get the ideas and then they are plugged into your calendar in a way that matches what is the weather in the destination on this day. When I think about MCP servers, if I were still at New York City Tourism, the way I would want to create an MCP server is something that includes the weather. It's because these servers can include these databases of kind of static information, but also feeds of live information and booking tools. So it could be connected to the cameras that already exist in Times Square and Lower Manhattan to understand how busy those parts of the city are at different times. So that it could tell me, oh, you want to go to the Staten Island ferry first because it's emptier right now. And then you want to come back and do the activity in Midtown later in the day because historically we know that it's less crowded at this time, and also the weather indicates that that's the best way to plan out your trip. And then it could put that information using MCP but inside your personal AI account into your calendar and help to guide your journey while you're in the destination. But
yeah.
I
I
think there's
think that's
definitely stop gaps before then, right?
Yeah, I think that's a real eye opener for where this space is heading, actually, and great context there. So, we're really looking at these primary LLMs, which dominate, in some form, probably most of our daily interactions. We're looking at those evolving, really, and MCP servers being just such a powerful opportunity for destinations to play within that space and to surface content experiences within the capabilities that they can deliver. I think it's a really, really interesting perspective because, as you know, destinations are brand, 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 and brand
Yes.
also means ownership. And so, this idea of ownership in a distributed web and a distributed world, it really requires complete realignment in terms of, what is how do we measure performance in this space, and how do we demonstrate value to our stakeholders in our industry. Um, and
Hmm.
and really kind of moving beyond the vanity side of digital, actually, where we create these really cool, really sexy pages and content, which still has its role, but what you're describing is actually sitting behind the scenes and feeding the machine and
Hmm.
recognizing that the social channels of today might be, to some extent, replaced by the LLMs of tomorrow. Perhaps they'll even become the next iOSs, and
Right.
dominate, the every single interaction that we have. So I think you really kind of set some interesting thoughts for the path ahead. For destinations that are maybe working at different speeds across the industry, and I guess you see this across the United States, where would you kind of see destinations sitting today, and what would your kind of closing advice be for them if they are still at the early stage, but also maybe if they're right at the other end, sort of sitting around the table with you, threshing out how to build those MCP servers and really collaborating on doing that? What would you say, if you look at both ends of the scale, what would your advice be to them?
So on the earlier stage, I'm encouraging those destinations to please put an AI policy in place. Our policy, the Brand USA policy, is available on our website, and I will share it with anybody who shoots me an email. I think that is really important to set the table stakes for how is your organization addressing AI and doing it in a secure and safe way. So I think that also means providing paid AI tools for your organization. And there are still like if you are in that space where you are letting everybody use their free chat GPT account at work, like you are not alone. That is still very common, but we have to move past that point now. Like we are several years into this, so it's time to take AI seriously. Part of that is providing the paid account so that the data is secure, that you have SOC 2 compliance on it moving to the cloud. And while it is in the cloud, you have training turned off on the model so that future versions of these tools aren't trained on the data
Yeah.
that your staff is putting in. Also, if somebody leaves, your organization, they don't get to keep their email account. They don't get to keep access to your shared files. So why would you let them keep access to everything they've put into Chat GPT? So I
Yeah,
think
good point.
Mhm. So that's very important. And then for the more mature organizations, it's about how are we making sure that we're bringing everybody in the company on board? So for me, that's becoming more meeting department by department and looking at what are the workflows that can be augmented with AI? What are the custom GPTs, which are just reusable prompts? What are the reusable prompts that we can build out in advance so that everybody on that team can use, this same prompt for more uniform work so that the work of everybody is lifted up, and then identify the people who are ready to move to that next step, who do want to have a conversation with me about building these MCP servers, because I think this is the perfect time to lean into those opportunities.
Yeah, well, I think you've said it perfectly. So I think that's a great note to wrap up on. Janette, I just want to say a huge thank you for sharing all and really just kind of this honest conversation, which I think has been really fascinating, interesting, and definitely inspiring, with some really, really good strategic pointers there. So I think those reflections that you just wrapped up with there, they perfectly sum up exactly how destinations need to be getting their game on when it comes to AI. I think it's reassuring as well to see that for a lot of destinations, they are still at this early stage. But as you say, it is time, and the time is now. And that starts with a bit of investment, putting some budget aside to see what is possible, and creating that alignment, as you were saying. And I'm really curious to see what that 5% do when it comes to really pushing the boundaries further and where we take this. I think a lot of us don't fully have a completely clear picture on where AI will go or maybe where it will stop, but we have a lot of ideas. And so I think from today's conversation, you've just added a few more ideas. So I think that's amazing. And I think we have to just keep inspiring each other and reflecting on what the different implications and developments mean for us. For now, thanks a lot, Janette. Been great to have you with us. And we're looking forward to connecting very soon.
Great. Thank you so much for the chat.
Thanks.